Hello, my name is Pamela Hart, and I am the Assistant Dean and Executive Director at the Center for Animal Law Studies at Lewis and Clark Law School. And today is World Farmed Animal Day, an annual day devoted to raising awareness for farmed animals every October. And I'm excited to have joining me today Professor Joyce Tischler along with Professor Russ Mead. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here with both of you. And why don't we just go ahead and get started? I'd like to start with a threshold question for each of you, if you don't mind. So why farmed animals? I'd like to start with that. And why is this area of animal law important to you? Why don't we start with you, Professor Tischler?
There are so many farmed animals being raised right now, more than there ever have been. 10 billion in the United States and 70 billion worldwide. And the conditions that they are raised in are absolutely abysmal. So why farmed animal law? It's the greatest number of animals and the greatest amount of suffering.
Thank you for that. And Professor Mead, why farmed animals and why are you passionate about this area
Well,
of the
I was
law?
going to echo the same thing. I'll take it one step further. All of this abuse is systemic. It's just built into the way that we produce food. And so as lawyers and as advocates, if we can attack this system, we can affect change for literally billions of animals. We don't get that opportunity in other areas of animal law.
Thank you. And I don't want to make any assumptions, and I know we have hopefully a lot of different people watching this. I know that a lot of people that I've met and run across in my professional career assume that there's a bevy of laws that protect farmed animals. Would you like to speak to that?
From cradle to grave, unfortunately, there are 3 stages for farmed animals. The first is the stage where they are raised, and that's 99% of the time they're alive. There is no federal law that covers how they are raised, nothing. Then there's the second stage, which is transport. There is a federal transport 28-hour law, which really has not been enforced properly for many, many decades. The third stage is slaughter, and that is the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act, which is enforced not well. Each of those stages involves abuse and suffering, and the federal laws really are totally inadequate to protect farmed animals.
Okay. And Professor Mead, can you speak to the state laws?
So the problem with this whole area is there are state laws. I mean, there's all of these counties and all of these states, and every one of them have animal cruelty laws. But you can't use the animal cruelty laws in these situations. They've been exempted out. Farm animals have been exempted out of all of these laws. So it's not that there's not enough laws, it's that the laws have been circumvented by industry and again by this system that puts forth this horrible abuse to these animals to supply meat into the food supply.
So what I'm hearing you, and to recap on World Farmed Animal Day, there is just a limitation to the number of laws, federal and statewide, that protect farmed animals.
Right. And that speaks to the strength and power of the meat, dairy, and egg industries in the United States. Mm-hmm. In Europe, it's a little bit different, and farmed animals have more protections, in the law at least.
Mm-hmm. And that's where we come in as the Center for Animal Law Studies, and you come in as faculty, but also let's talk about the students for a minute. Can you tell me about the students in your current classes or in your past classes, and what makes them feel so passionately about this area of the law? What drives them?
I've noticed in the last 10 years there's been a significant increase in the number of students coming to Lewis and Clark and other schools who specifically want to study farmed animal law and go into protecting farmed animals, which makes me very hopeful. The way that I teach the industrial animal agriculture law class is that I teach it as more than just the well-being of the animals. I teach the student about the impacts on the environment, on environmental justice, on food safety, on the workers, so that they can take a look at the CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operations, or factory farm system as a whole rather than just piecemeal, and that when they get out, they can begin to challenge it with that knowledge very holistically.
And before we move to Professor Mead, I just want to ask you a follow-up question. Can you tell us a little bit about the course you teach and the book that you are writing in relation to farmed animal issues.
Well, the course that I teach is Industrial Animal Agriculture Law, and it complements what Professor Mead is doing, which is really exciting, that they're giving them a 1-2 shot. The students who come into my class are studying the basics of what are the impacts on the animals, the health impacts, the psychological impacts. What's the impact on the environment? And we're talking about water pollution, air pollution, degradation of soil, and climate change. CAFOs and factory farms are closely connected to climate change and a big influencer. And then we talk about what happens to the workers and what happens to the neighbors, environmental justice issues. And again, it's a holistic approach. And then I pass them off to Professor Mead and let him take the ball from there.
And that was a beautiful transition. Professor Mead?
So we've started a new program, the Farmed Animal Protection Project. And these are students that have come to Lewis and Clark primarily to help animals, and in particular farmed animals. And everybody has their own project. They have their own nonprofit that they want to create, or their own special project specifically to help the animals. So they're taking everything that they've learned in law school and all of these other disciplines and packing it together into a project that they actually conduct here on campus to help the animals. Some of these projects are going to last for decades, I'm sure. We've had prior students who have worked on these kinds of projects, and they're going strong, doing work protecting animals all over the world. That makes us unique in this program.
Thank you. And for those of you who don't know, our mission at the Center for Animal Law Studies is to educate the next generation of animal law advocates and advance protection for animals through the law. And with that, I'd like to ask each of you before we close out today, what allows you to remain hopeful as you work on farmed animal issues, which can be at times full of despair and defeat, but what keeps you going? And we'll start with you, Professor Tischler.
This system of raising mass numbers of animals is so destructive, it is unsustainable, and I know that it will end at some point. That's what keeps me going.
I look at it from a historical perspective. Part of it is just I've got white hair, but things have come a long way in even the last 10 or 15 years. I can remember going door to door, getting petitions signed to get different laws on ballots in different states. And things have changed. Maybe it doesn't seem like it's in good shape now, but it used to be a whole lot worse. So I'm very excited. I think there's been more movement to help animals in the last 15 years than there's been in the last 100. So this is the golden age for animal protection and animal rights.
Yeah. And Lewis and Clark is the place to study farmed animal law.
Thank you both. I know listening to you two, I certainly have renewed hope. And thank you for joining me on World Farmed Animal Day. And thank you all to everyone who has joined us via this video and having an opportunity and taking the time to listen to us as well. So with that, thank you both, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you, Dean.